back to an obscure tour at the edge of the internet. I am your host, the Nameless Tour Guide, and I hope you like my frightening outfit, as today we are celebrating the spookiest time of year by doing the most terrifying thing known to man, admitting we get things wrong. So here we are in the Dark Root Garden instead of Upper Enelondo, because today we are making Big Hat Logan a symbol of Velka, as we talked about many episodes ago. But we will also be giving meaning to the design of the metal doors in the Undead Asylum, and in doing so we will rearrange the constellation of Lordran. This is all thanks to the lore expert Johann Burgermeister, who sent me a message from the far-flung future with details about that design being hidden in Dark Souls 3 in the Cathedral of the Deep. I was going to save all this for after Upper Enelondo, but as I was getting ready for that episode, I saw the remastering of the Cathedral doors. There is a symbol at the very top that was always hard to see, and I believed it was a symbol of the nameless blacksmith deity. But now that I can see it more clearly, I believe it's something else entirely, which we'll discuss next episode. And these changes actually help explain that symbol, weirdly enough. To help make sense of these changes and explain how they affect the lore, I want to spend a bit of time doing something I have meant to do for a while, but keep cutting it for time, and that is explain the nature of this tour. For this section, if you wish, you can look at the visuals on your screen and decide for yourself. Is the thing you're seeing a meaningful part of the lore? Is it irrelevant filler? Or is it just a video game being a video game? There is no right answer to this. What is happening on this tour, as we discussed quickly at the end of last episode, is that we are playing a game that is very similar to another part of Dark Souls, the single player component. People play Dark Souls for many different reasons. Some like to rush from boss to boss, others like to farm low-level enemies, others speedrun Dark Souls with chosen constraints and times to beat. Whatever the player finds satisfying is the right way to play Dark Souls, and if anyone approached you while you were enjoying your time in Lordran and said you were playing it wrong, you would rightfully laugh at that person. What is happening on this tour is the same idea but for the lore. It is a free-form game, and I'd like to define this game as I see it. At its most fundamental level, as we play this game, we can and will believe anything we want about the events and characters of Lordran. Literally, no one is going to come to our house and force us to believe anything about Lordran and its heroes. If we are satisfied with our lore, we are doing it right. How many kings of New Londo are there? If you answered 2 and you're satisfied with that answer, you are correct. This level seems vacuous, but you spend a lot of time here, for reasons we will go into later. The next level of this game gives us a bit more structure. Poetically, we are looking for the story of Lordran and its crazy characters, built up from what we experience in the game. Though a less poetic way of looking at it is we are trying to recover the story used by Miyazaki to control the artistic direction of the game by analysing the artifacts that came out of that creative process. We start to lose control at this point, as we must reconcile our lore with the artifacts we find, and it becomes more of a game. Just as we cannot change the stats of a weapon in single player, we must acknowledge there are 4 kings of New Londo. Though this is a more free-form game than single player, as we must use our imagination to fully explore this world. Who is to say there is only 4 kings of New Londo? New Londo could have been ruled by several kings before the 4 kings took their throne. At this point the rules will diverge for everyone, as we must ask ourselves, what are we trying to achieve with this game? What arbitrary constraints will we put in place so we know when we're done and try to control this type of chaos? The way I did this was I came up with a mental list of questions I had about Lordran, and when they were answered I was done. Though as I sought those answers, more questions were added to the list until we ended up here. Now there is so much detail in Dark Souls, in the end we all have to decide what is meaningful and what is not. And depending on the choices you make, you will see a different version of Lordran. But if we play this game correctly with infinite time, knowledge, wisdom and patience, we will find the story at the core of this game. Now I don't have anywhere near infinite amounts of any of those precious resources, and so at some point I decided I was done with Lordran. The metal doors of the Undead Asylum left as a question with no answer. If you're a fan of Dark Souls, did you ever translate Ladizia de Viv? I know I didn't until the very end, and I laughed as I watched Claire recoil from her withholding mother and embrace the nature of her reckless father, as I had seen happen to Priscilla and her parents. I didn't translate the books because it wasn't important to me. Priscilla and her parents were, and because of how Dark Souls is structured, I ended up in the same place. Does this make it correct? It does for me. Anything else is none of my business. I was chatting with Agent of Providence in the comments after last episode, and they were wondering if I'd gotten any of these theories from Dark Souls 2 or 3. The answer is, that is one of my constraints. I'm just here trying to explain the details of Dark Souls 1. The sequels are not a focus for me, because if I didn't, my brain would explode, as I do not have anywhere near infinite wisdom. Trying to solve all these games at once would be insane. I'll be jumping around trying to marry up several different characters all at once. So I started with the easiest game, Dark Souls 1. There is only a handful of characters I need to explain, and limited evidence I need to handle. I don't need to explain the nature of Henri of Astora, and if these theories do explain her storyline, well, I've just made my reading of Dark Souls 3 a lot easier. I have had some joyous moments, as strange outlandish things I thought was just me going crazy after too many hours in Lordran show up in future installments, just lying around here and there, the Four Flames of Lordran being one of them. Though some other things have given me pause and made me think I will have to modify my theories once I get around to the sequels. What we are changing today will help me immensely with the future games. Though I didn't need these ideas to be satisfied with Dark Souls 1, because I had found a way to explain the events with the evidence I had from this game, plus my own choices conjured up from my own life experiences. I was satisfied with the answers, and at the fundamental level of this game, that is all that matters. This is the importance of the level 0. It fills in the voids as I explore the world, ready to be disregarded when required. The Four Kings example is just a simple one, but this quickly becomes more complex, and leaves us as viewers in a place where we have to be okay with not knowing everything about Lordran, even on the most basic levels. How many Flames of Lordran are there? Just one, the First Flame, or two, the First Flame and the Chaos Flame? I have proposed 4 in this reading, though I have seen things in Dark Souls 2 that suggest to me there may be 6 flames, but that is for another day and another reading. Even in this reading, I have made choices about the classification. By compressing Jerry's flame, a flame I believe is many flames, into one single phenomenon. These are all elements that we are free to play with, until we are satisfied or our resources run out. What is going to happen today is something that has happened countless times to me before. An element moves from being meaningless filler to a meaningful artifact, and in doing so, I will change my lore, because I choose to. No one is going to come to my house and force me to. I do this because I find it incredibly fun. That is part of what Dark Souls is for me, one of the best puzzle games I've ever played. Is it cheating using artifacts from Dark Souls 3 as the starting point for this? For me, yes, absolutely. But hey, once I saw it, I can't unsee it, so here we are. A constellation of stars where each star is a character is one way of seeing this. Another is like cleaning up a messy room. There are boxes with meaningless words written on them. Manus, Gwyn, Havel the Rock. Piled in the middle of the room are the artifacts we find. The goal of this game is to find the best way to organize those artifacts into the boxes provided, and in doing so, we give meaningless words, like Gwyn, meaning. The title, the Blacksmith Deity. Which box does it go into? It can go into any, but where it goes, it comes with a collection of connected artifacts. One simple one being the visual design of the Titanite demon, as that is where we find the title. So who looks like a Titanite demon? Manus looks like a Titanite demon, so into the box goes the title, with everything connected to it. Would I ever move the title to another box? Absolutely, as long as it's more satisfying and answers more questions with the move. And here's the thing, when you move the artifacts, you accidentally leave some connected ideas back in the other boxes. For me, I don't sweat that stuff too much, as I found as I continued exploring, everything shakes out pretty nicely in Lordran, and you can move things as you go. Because in the end, there is a story we are uncovering, and as we make those changes, that consistent underlying story helps us along. And on from that, if the move doesn't work, I quickly found basic things around Lordran started breaking, and you end up with 2 Kings of New Londo. It's what makes Dark Souls quite an exceptional piece. Velka has been Priscilla's mother, sister, annoyed school friend, until she finally became her daughter, and when I put Velka in that place, a lot of other elements started to drop into place. This section has been a lot about my personal opinion on this game, but where it affects you is it shows you things you can do with this tour. This tour may make meaningful filler suddenly meaningful, though of course you're free to keep any of the things I show you just as filler. What you can also do is rearrange the artifacts however you want. Maybe Velka being the source of all knowledge does not sit right with you. Maybe Priscilla is more your vision of the wise sage. No problem, grab the artifacts I've shown you and throw them in Priscilla's box. I'm not going to come around to your house and tell you not to. This is not what the tour is about. This tour is a celebration of Dark Souls 1 and its connected ideas, and with it comes a narrative you may agree with, may disagree with, or partially agree with. If you know Dark Souls 3 really well, I'm sure you're a million miles down the road of sacrifices and seeing even more than I am, and you have a more effective way of organizing the artifacts. This is great, and I'm sure by the time I catch up with you, we'll have tons to discuss. Something else you may have noticed about this tour is that Menace and Velka have pretty big boxes overflowing with artifacts. This is something I am very aware of. Unfortunately, in Dark Souls 1, Menace and Velka seem to be very big characters, and they like to shove others out of the spotlight. I think that is because of the fact that this is a video game with a budget and a timeline, and I believe Menace and Velka are the driving force and main focus of this game, with the other characters along for the ride, which leaves the other characters for Dark Souls 3. To get 3 games out of one creative core, you can keep shifting focus. I have noticed Dark Souls 3 seems to be the Gwendolyn show. Havel the Rock seems to be positioned prominently as well, but not as much. Priscilla and Menace have been completely sidelined, as they seem to be the stars of Dark Souls 2, and Velka is there as always keeping things together as the storyteller, but she has also been pulled back on, as she was the star of the first game. I believe there will be a Dark Souls 4 eventually, because that's how the video games industry works, but I think that is why it will be hard to do immediately, as by the time all the 3 games were done, everyone had had their time in the spotlight. I may be wrong about all this, but this is my general feeling about the 2 sequels, so if you are a fan of the other 2 games, you may be able to find better fits for these ideas. One final thing to discuss as we return to Filing Shrine. This aspect of Dark Souls storytelling is great from the point of view of the philosophies that I believe inspire this game. It is related to the idea of Schopenhauer's will we discussed at the end of last episode. Imagine we are all in a huge pitch black room with a complex 3-dimensional shape that spans the entire room. The shape is made up of vertices, edges and faces that you can touch and explore, and they lead from one to another. The shape exists, but we don't know what it is, or where an edge will lead. We experience it in one dimension at any given time, as there is no light. We try to build up an idea of the shape by remembering where we have been before. As we explore, eventually we come across another person who is also exploring the same shape. As it is the same shape, we can help each other with our understanding of it, but first we must learn to explain the feeling of a 3-dimensional shape experienced in darkness. Then we need to try to understand what others have experienced as they try to find their own language to describe the shape. Finally, we must hold all of this in our heads if we want to understand it the best we can. But in the end, the nature of the shape will be decided by you alone in a huge dark room. That is the complex task at hand for us all. And don't forget to have fun. This is a game and should always be fun. That's another one of my constraints. So let's get back to Lordran and making Big Hat Logan a symbol of Velka instead of Seek the Scalers. This change happened 1.5 years ago when I was doing the Crestfallen Warrior episode. I was at Wikidots, my favourite Dark Souls wiki, getting the dialogue for that character, as I like to do. And I saw what he says about Big Hat Logan, something I rarely come across because I actually do like leaving Logan locked in Sen's Fortress. And as I read it, it didn't feel like something Havel the Rock would say about Seek the Scalers. It felt more like something he should be saying about Velka. Also, I've never liked Petrus and Logan, both being symbols of Seif. I prefer a one-to-one mapping where possible, because it forces me to push myself on my interpretation of the characters and look at them in ways I wouldn't normally. But by making this change, it affected something else, something I've noticed about Dark Souls, but I didn't want to acknowledge it unless I really had to. I have decided Menace is the blacksmith deity, therefore he gets all the blacksmithing credit. There is a case for Gwyn and Havel the Rock to be blacksmiths, but I can explain those occurrences by Menace's name. He created all the weapons of the gods, whether they are silver knights or giant dragon tooth clubs. If I'm not strict about this, all the characters of Lordran quickly become undefined as they fall into each other. Everyone has to go to Velka for mystical knowledge. She is the one with the books, no one else gets that characteristic. This makes her relevant and lets me place her in the story. Though I break this rule for Seek the Scalers, because he has an ember of his own, that he keeps as a blacksmith does in this game. I will deviate from this rule when I feel I have to. I could create a more complex story which keeps Menace as the only blacksmith, but I choose not to do so in this case. This character merging I believe is a result of 2 things, the inspired way this story is told, and the nature of the story that is being told. What I call the cycle story. Tommy from last episode is a cycle story, so is Run Lola Run. It is a story in which there are known tropes. Mirrors, mazes, crystals, mirror worlds, spiral staircases, mystical doorways, windows and ghosts. One of these tropes is the characters are similar but different by one key aspect, forming mirrors. Menace and Gwyn are two characters who are designed to be similar. When paired with this type of storytelling, it means you have to grab a hold of the differences and not let go unless absolutely forced, because the mirroring doesn't just stop at one character. Good versions of this story fold into themselves over and over again like a kaleidoscope, and this is a good version of the cycle story. What is happening with Big Hat Logan is something that happens again and again with Velka when she is depicted in the Dark Souls series. She is represented symbolically as a male character. Even with this reading, I had Nico, a symbolic male, alongside Vince, a symbol of Gwendolyn. There is a statue of Velka in Dark Souls 2 in Brightstone Cove, holding her talisman from Dark Souls 1. This rust statue has a very masculine feel to it. I started thinking, was Velka depicted as a woman? The firekeepers here in Dark Souls 1 are complex, so let's park those for the moment. But then I thought of Anri of Astora in Dark Souls 3, the perfect symbol of Velka in my mind, and clearly a woman. How would I explain Anri if Velka was always a man? But then I remembered something about Anri. What happens to her when you start the game as a female character rather than a male character? Anri becomes a man. Anri is whatever gender is needed to tell their story. Velka is a man and a woman. I was pondering this while doing the Dark Souls 2 playthrough I was talking about before, and I got to the area with the Rotten, where I encountered two new Dark Spirit invaders, Woodland Child Gully and Woodland Child Victor, Gwendolyn and Velka. Victor could be a reference to a German film called Victor und Victoria, which is the story of a woman who pretends to be a drag queen who falls in love with a man who believes she is a man dressed as a woman. I finally came around to the idea that Velka is now a drag queen, just like her brother. What happens if I just let that be true? Here is a new artifact. Velka is a man. Into the box it goes. This does not change much for Velka. Velka is what she is, and what she is an illusion. This is bad news for Gwendolyn though. Being the insecure child hiding behind a beautiful woman is his thing. Everything else, the Dark Moon deity, even being the Dark Sun, are things that other characters in Lordran have and have just ended up being dumped on Gwendolyn. His gender fluidity is what defined him for me, and how I spotted him around Lordran, like Menace and blacksmithing. And then I started thinking more on it, and it answered too many questions for me to deny it any longer. What this changes mostly for me is dusk. The gender fluidity isn't about Gwendolyn, it's about the scaleless dragons. Have you ever been so close to your princess that you feel like you could reach out and touch her, only to have her vanish before your eyes, or some fearsome beast lurks just off screen? If you have, then you've got yourself a scaleless dragon. So sadly for my favourite character, the Dark Sun Gwendolyn, I have to take this defining characteristic and give it to all of his brothers, because it just works so well, and gives meaning to Dusk, a character who when we would have met would have gotten a different telling, but now I am much happier about where I am with Dusk. As for Gwendolyn, I was disappointed, but there is more to Gwendolyn than just his illusory sister, and now it's about making those aspects more important. What defines Gwendolyn for me now is something that can be seen as valiant or cruel. Where is Gwendolyn? He is still in the game. Unlike his mother, his sister, his brother, or his father, he is still in Analondo because he cares about others. Some may say that what he's doing is not the right thing to do, but that is an interpretation. But at least he is willing to acknowledge and deal with the mess his family has made. So here we are again in the Undead Asylum and the metal doors. Why is this place so maddening? Because of what we are doing right now. This is what it means to have too many eyes. Guinevere is real, Guinevere is an illusion. Now Velka is not real. What is real? Am I allowed to just declare Guinevere married Flan and deride this Nameless Tour guide as a fool? Absolutely. That's the amazing aspect of this storytelling. What we are going on is Velka's journey with her. Menace is her perfect eternal love that is meant to be. All she has to do is rearrange the universe. What is this symbol? It is 4 spears coming out of some kind of disc. At the center a lizard or a snake. Who gives us the spears? The god of war, who inherited the sunlight of Gwyn, who had respect only for arms and nothing else. In Latin, manus means arm. Sen, the firstborn of Gwyn, is Velka, the goddess of sin. That is why it is the mask of Velka. not Velka's mask. These vases are polished like the vases of Sen's fortress, as Sen was locked away here after the collapse of Astora. There is so much to cover here that I don't think I'll have time for, but don't worry, we'll be correcting things as we go. The big thing may be, how did I miss this? Well, because Velka is the smartest character in Lordran, and that tricky rat has been fooling me all these years. What happens in Lordran is as you get around Analondo, Velka kind of vanishes, as Sen becomes more prominent, and then reappears in the painted world when Sen is missing. Whenever Sen is around, Velka is absent and vice versa. Symbols of Gwyndolin and Guinevere behave similarly. But once you marry the two up, there is a continuous story. Velka rounds everyone up and sends them to her own fortress to be tested. So why didn't I need this vital idea? Velka and Sen didn't need to talk to each other until one point in the story, and that piece of story involves their one common thread, their brother Gwyndolin, who brought them together. Now I don't need that idea, as they are the same person. And on from that is the difference between Sen and Gwyndolin. Gwyndolin is a drag queen. He refers to Guinevere as something external to himself. Sister Guinevere, he says. That is not how I see Sen. He is a transgender character. He is the goddess of sin. And I think that is because he is more daring than his brother. The famous statue of Guinevere is her standing next to her father Gwyn, but by my theories there is something wrong. The statue is on the wrong side, and in another timeline I would have stood in front of those statues and said, I don't know what this is. Now I'm happier with that anomaly. That is not Guinevere. That is Sen's first illusory sister, who I do not think is Velka. Why let this nameless sister have all the fun, when Sen could be holding Menace in his arms himself? All he has to do is rearrange the universe. Is this nameless sister Fina goddess of love? I don't think so either. I have another place for Fina that we will get to, but their ideas are connected. Is it Filianor? Well, I have no idea. I'll leave that up to the Dark Souls 3 experts. Also note the two sisters are identical. They are twins. I think this indicates Sen and Gwyndolin are twin brothers, a two-headed caduceus that burst out of Gwyn. We'll get into the nature of the caduceus later. Does this mean we can get rid of Velka and fold her completely into Sen? I wouldn't do that, but it's up to you. The narrative I'm giving you is more than just a telling of a version of Lordran's history. It is a store of information. Velka and Sen are connected ideas, but distinct from one another. Velka is a mask. Sen is the god of war, who has respect only for arms. Who knows what the creators at From Software will use this duality for in the future. And it's important that we have all the sisters accounted for in case they break free from their conjurers, which I believe is possible in Lordran. So I hope this makes all the fans of the Firstborn of Gwyn happy. I finally get Sen out of Analondo and into the muck of Lordran. What I love about this change is it simplifies the story immensely, as I can now finally say something I've wanted to say since I started this whole exercise years ago. The pillars of these games are the four kings of New Londo. Velka always stopped this from happening. The structure seemed to be more Velka leading each king to his own separate destruction, as she slowly learned things about herself and others. Now it's much neater, the four kings, the four great ones, the four lords of Cinder, plus a group of interlopers who stumbled into their kingdom and decided to make themselves lords. This is great news for Havel the Rock and Gwyndolin. I now have a reason to get them involved in the era of Astora and the era of the Lords, when Priscilla and Sen were in the catacombs. To end this episode, I just thought I'd run through a couple of big questions that leapt to my mind as I was making these changes, and the answers that I came up with for them. Is Velka still Priscilla's daughter? Yes, stepdaughter and brother. This was always the case with Sen. And now Sen gets a standing child statue, just next to his broken statue in the undead parish. Is it still Velka's coffin in the catacombs? For now, yes. Sen and Priscilla both worked at the catacombs for their mother, the Witch of Izalith. Now Sen is in the catacombs. Trusty Patches is now finally, and excitingly for me, a symbol of Sen and no longer a symbol of Nito. In the episode about Dark Souls 2, you saw me struggling with this nature of Sen. Mild-mannered Pate and Kraton the Wanderer, Sen and Menace. You will find Sen and Menace fighting in Brightstone Cove, if you follow their questline. And if he survives, mild-mannered Pate will exclaim at the end of the fight, what type of misunderstanding would lead to this? Before this, I had no idea. In Dark Souls 1, I didn't need Menace or Sen to have a relationship, and yet there they were trying to kill each other in the sequel. Then the item description of Pate's spear. A long spear wielded by Pate. This appears to be a very ordinary spear, but seems to have accumulated power over the course of countless battles. It's not always advisable to stand out, especially if you've got something to hide. Is Havel the Rock the father of Velka? No, now Gwyn is Velka's father. One of the reasons I wanted to come down from Enelonda before I covered this was I just wanted to capture the original birth of Velka as I saw it, before I changed it completely. I really like the visuals, and we did that at the end of last episode. It's sad to see ideas like this go. I always liked the idea of Sen, who had been living the sweet life in Enelondo, coming down to inherit the kingdom and looking at Blighttown and Isolus for the first time and wondering what the heck everyone had been doing all this time, and realizing that this was his sunlight now. But it was not the right idea for Dark Souls, so out it goes. Returning to Havel, instead I'm playing with the idea that he is Sen and Priscilla's guardian. He is also still a hilarious father though. I believe Havel the Rock has a daughter, and there were a few candidates for this. I narrowed it down to Velka and Fina, Goddess of Love. It could have gone either way, so I chose Velka, as it gets Havel the Rock into the story more. Now I'm going to swap it over to Fina, and possibly the coffin in the catacombs is Fina's as well, but we'll get there when we get there. And that's everything from the Asylum. Thanks again to Johann Burgermeister for sending me this information. Happy All Hallows Eve to everyone. This is the Soulless Tour Ghoul wishing you all pleasant screams.